获益，来吧，贝下龙，在平安中，阿泰来，戴上王冠，巴拉，他的新郎，波伊卡拉，来吧，新娘。这是一首优美的希伯来婚礼歌曲，仿佛天上的天使在呼唤等待了6000年的新娘，勇敢地站出来，为将要来临的天上君王戴上荣耀的冠冕。
Ju Menglong, Joseph, one suffering the same kinds of pain. In the following posts, we will comprehensively compare Ju Menglong and Joseph. Joseph is seen as a foreshadowing of Jesus because they suffered the same pain and fate. He was the most miserable of the kings of Adam's family and the most miserable of the 12 children of Israel. He saved the house of Israel with his suffering. Today, Ju Menglong has awakened the hearts of all kings with his purity and tragic death. Therefore, those who killed him this time are bloody misfortune. God's hand of judgment will make them blood for blood. That CCP party will definitely be eradicated. And it will happen in the year of the snake. Ju Menglong and Joseph are both beautiful men. We will do a program to discuss Joseph's beauty in detail, but Ju Menglong's beauty does not need to be expressed in words. It can be understood at a glance. However, the purity and kindness of his heart have only recently become known to everyone. Enoch knew about Joseph in China from his spirit a few years ago. Go and watch the 6park.com Junjunqingqing channel in the past few years. Enoch had been waiting for Joseph to reign over China after the first wave of Great Tribulation. This is why these demons hated him so much and ultimately tore him apart. This is why, after his death, Enoch's spirit was deeply troubled, and Joseph's soul lamp dimmed. In fact, the entire spiritual realm was shaken, and even heaven itself wept for him. Therefore, no one could suppress the momentum for his vindication. His death is exposing the CCP's most secretive and sinful dealings in human flesh and living human flesh. These truths will inevitably detonate the hearts of righteous people worldwide and ultimately bury this darkness. Some may ask why so many things in the past went unnoticed, yet this time they exploded, and why some still dream they can suppress their evil like before. Enoch is here to tell these people that the more they suppress, the greater their sin becomes, and it will also have the opposite effect. The more they cover up, the more it will be exposed. Therefore, for those who continue to do evil, remember, the coverings within your spirits, the demonic Satan family, were all cast out of heaven in October 2024. This is why, suddenly, all witchcraft and spells are ineffective. Anyone who could previously hide in darkness and do as they please can no longer hide, for their protective shield has been thrown away. Those who continue to do evil will be doubly punished, and their condemnation will be swift. In heaven's arrangement, whoever suffers for God, whose cup of bitterness is the most bitter, will be the greatest. This is why, among all the kings, some must taste the most bitter bitterness in the world. And those who suffer the most are handsome men and beautiful women like Ju Menglong. They appear glamorous, but they live the most miserable lives at the hands of rapists and evildoers. Sexual assault is just a minor incident. These evildoers wish to devour even our souls and spirits. Unfortunately, they can only injure our flesh, our animal shells, but cannot harm our spirits and souls. This is why, throughout history, beautiful women have often suffered from tragic fates, and the most tragic fate belongs to men who are even more beautiful than beautiful women. This was Joseph's choice from the beginning. Joseph's life was the most miserable of his brothers. He suffered for a full 13 years, but in reality, it was only 11 years. The last 2 years were because Joseph pleaded with Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker to save him, and God ultimately added 2 more years of suffering. His 11 years of suffering were also to redeem 11 brothers. So, 1 year of suffering was for each brother saved. Ju Menglong, after his debut in 2013, also spent 11 years from 2014 to 2025. Just like Enoch, he once wanted to escape the bitter cup, but later realized it was his own cup and accepted it with peace of mind. While an ordinary person could escape it by his own means, Ju Menglong had to endure this bitter cup to redeem his brothers. Just as Jesus had to endure the cross to fulfill God's plan, not to atone for the sins of the entire world, but to demonstrate it to Enoch and Elijah so they would understand how to act. So don't ask why he didn't flee, as he did in the last live stream, or why he still obeyed. In reality, he didn't obey the devil, but only God. God intended for the devil to reveal their wickedness and filthiness when they tore through our flesh, ultimately condemning them. Remember, we too will experience this tearing, most directly during the circumcision process, the entire journey within the Arkansas. Without undergoing the 3.5 years of refinement within the ark, we will not return to the Garden of Eden. So, Ju Menglong, Joseph will be within the ark, and after Enoch's resurrection from 3 days and 3 nights of death, he will ride a fiery dragon and a fiery horse to heaven to repeat his duty. Afterward, we will all, together within the ark on earth, endure the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation until these demons are buried. We will discuss these figures in detail when discussing Joseph and Ju Menglong's exquisite figures. Here, we simply want to remind you that, like Jesus, Joseph suffered for his brothers. There is only one thing that heaven comforted Enoch, although the devil can do whatever he wants with Ju Menglong's body, and although the light of Ju Menglong's spirit and soul is now very dim and imprisoned, from hell to heaven, God is the sovereign. Therefore, although the righteous are imprisoned in darkness, darkness cannot harm their spirits and souls. Those who say that Ju Menglong's soul has been dispersed are maliciously spreading nonsense. Ju Menglong's soul is safe in God's hands. They have simply completed their mission and are watching our battle. Everyone, remember that only if we ultimately win can we truly vindicate Ju Menglong and all the righteous. Only if we win can we go into the darkness and release the righteous. Even God's eternal life depends on our ultimate victory. In this sense, our greatest mourning for Ju Menglong is to step into God's destiny for us, to accept Ju Menglong's bitter cup, and to achieve our own glory. This is the true mourning for Ju Menglong and for Joseph. Now let's talk in detail about the sufferings of these two people. Later we will look at these two people from all aspects, and finally we will know that they are actually the same person. What a tragedy would such a handsome man face after being sold. 1. Being beaten. People like this are the most envied, so there are many bastards like Fan Shichi who want to tear Joseph apart. If you read the Book of the Righteous, Book of Jasher, you will find that on the first day of being sold, Joseph was beaten violently, until God could no longer bear it and made the hand that hit Joseph be hit back at the person who hit him, and that was the end. You have to know that that was the first day, and he would definitely be beaten for many days after that. Even if he later became a steward, he was still a slave. Even if he was in charge of the dungeon, he was still a member of the dungeon, so being beaten and ridiculed was normal. This is why Joseph only lived to be 110 years old, almost the shortest among all his brothers, because those 22 years were really hard on his body. Joseph suffered for 13 years and it took another 9 years before he could see his family, so it was a full 22 years. In fact, Enoch was also separated from his father for 22 years. Although he would not be beaten, loneliness and solitude were both sharp swords that could kill people. Fortunately, he still had 2.5 years to complete God's mission. God's grace was sufficient. If we were to unfold the story of Ju Menglong being beaten, it would make us collapse. It started in 2014. This is what he said. Before the age of 25, he was happy, but after that competition, he was no longer happy. 2. Being sexually assaulted. Potiphar's wife was just a threat. God pointed out the ones that were clear, but there were many more that were not pointed out. There were not only women, but also men. This is why his 10 brothers went to brothels every time they went to Egypt to look for their younger brother, because he was too beautiful and would eventually end up in such places. Fortunately, God protected Joseph, but all this was so that he could finally complete the mission of this generation, Doomsday Final Test. So this time Ju Menglong was really humiliated. These beasts are worse than us. 3. Being eaten. God said that this is a world that eats people. Christians will undoubtedly argue that, aside from eating Jesus' flesh and blood, the Bible doesn't mention cannibalism, and that's a metaphor. The book of Enoch directly tells us that the giants were born from evil angels and human women. These evil offspring eat everything, including humans. So, when the Great Tribulation comes, will these evil angels incarnate into humans also eat less? When humanity reaches its most insane moment, when even the greatest tragedies of the past become insignificant, do you think cannibalism is still a long way off? They thought that by deleting the video of the hotel's various demons devouring Ju Menglong, people would be oblivious. Little do they know that their evil deeds are already in God's sight. When the time comes, they will be held responsible. Those Christians are truly naive. Didn't the devil simply want to eat Jesus' flesh and drink his blood? So they fabricated this lie, making it up. Think about it, anyone who teaches others to see women having evil thoughts is already committing sin in their hearts. Can drinking human blood and eating human flesh be just a lie? If that's the case, why can't rape, sodomy, pedophilia, and bestiality be faked? So, those who still don't believe Ju Menglong was murdered will have to face it themselves. The person who complained about the video of the hotel where demons from all over the world gathered to eat Ju Menglong will surely face great trouble. When his entire family suffers, not even a bird in the world will pity him, because he brought this upon himself. And isn't even Google, which always claims to do no evil, actively cooperating with the devil to cover up the truth? Don't think they've only removed that art gallery from their map. In fact, Google contributed significantly to the CCP's nationwide network of cameras to control its people. Joseph is the closest image to Jesus, and Christians call him a foreshadowing of Jesus. Therefore, if he couldn't eat Jesus, he would eventually choose to eat this person, the entity that drinks Jesus' blood and eats his flesh. Think about it, God the Father tells everyone, through the Noahic covenant, that all of Adam's family must not drink blood. This includes the blood of all animals, and certainly not human blood or human flesh. God classifies pigs as unclean, and many religions do the same, because pork is too similar to human flesh. This is why the world will end in the year of the pig, 2031. In the past, mixing pig blood with sacrificial blood was the most blasphemous sin that humans could think of. And in these craziest years, eating human blood and drinking human blood, and even large-scale massacres, are inevitable. The final madness of Satan's family is to bring purgatory into the world. And sacrifices to ghosts require blood, especially human blood, so how can they not eat and drink human flesh? So the demons and monsters in Journey to the West who wanted to eat Tang Sanzang's flesh actually wanted to eat the flesh of pious people. 4. Corpses trapped and cursed by witchcraft. When the Egyptians rose up and wanted to persecute the Israelites, they were most afraid of Joseph. Although Joseph had been dead for many years, they trembled when they saw Joseph's remains. So the Egyptians raided Joseph's house, placed his bones in a large iron box, and finally sunk it to the bottom of the Nile. Only then, feeling safe, did they begin persecuting the Israelites. Now they're racking their brains to conceal the hazy corpse, using all sorts of witchcraft and sorcery, but are they effective? Back then, Moses took God's rod, walked to the Nile River, and placed it on the water. Joseph's iron coffin floated to the surface. They carried the coffin out of Egypt and, after entering Canaan, buried Joseph in Shechem. As a son-in-law of Adam's family, Joseph ultimately inherited the deceased Adam's inheritance and lived forever. This is why God holds Joseph in such high regard. His death this time undoubtedly marks the beginning of the destruction of those murderers. No matter how hard they try to cover it up, they can't. Recently, we've seen Li Muyang, a reporter from News Highlights, charging into the human flesh industry chain. Those evildoers will never let go of the bodies. They'll sexually assault, take organs, and plastinate them. These demons, capable of sucking even the bone marrow dry, won't let go of the remaining flesh. They consume it themselves and even mix it with pre-prepared meals. No wonder the Holy Spirit warned Enoch to stay away from things like pork floss 10 years ago. Of course, heaven will show mercy to those who are unaware or framed, but it's best to avoid them. You never know how Satan will accuse you, or what kind of suffering you'll ultimately endure. Who among us kings could endure 11 years of hell? Ju Menglong's 11 years of suffering are truly as news highlights describes. If the truth were revealed, every aspect would drive a normal person insane. None of those murderers will have a good end. 5. 798 Art Museum and Kiheo Genesis Art Gallery are a carefully designed witchcraft. 798 is equal to 777 plus 22 to 1. Again, this is an arrangement that pleases Joseph. Therefore, this is a carefully designed scheme to deceive Joseph. Even the numbers are understood by spiritual people. They must have thought that by hiding Joseph's body in the basement, on the 4th floor, God permitted 40 days of tribulation, fasting, which also counted as the first days of great unrest on Noah's Ark, and was also part of the arrangement for 4,000 years of human suffering. The devils felt reassured by choosing these numbers, but they didn't know that 2.5 years later, Enoch would go to hell to release Joseph's spirit. Who would want animal flesh this time? It's just the shell of a cicada. God the Father will give us a body of angel. So, those devils will be greatly disappointed. For the sake of an animal body, they have committed a heinous crime. The Kiheo Genesis Art Gallery Art Museum is that oppressive triangular building. It was designed by the so-called Japanese architect Tadao Ando, who also designed many other buildings, including the 2 churches famous for their crosses, among others. The sense of oppression arises from the non-equilateral triangle shape. We are generally familiar with the equilateral triangle and the inverted triangle. The combination of the 2 forms forms the Star of David, the famous hexagon. It is a symbol of the unity of Father and Son, of the unity of the family of Adam and the family of Abraham, of 2 brothers reaching out to embrace each other, and of the 2 cherubim guarding the Ark of the Covenant. This is a reasonable and delightful pattern. But when you stretch the triangle into an irregular shape, it's like a person being twisted and deformed, with limbs missing. This is a subconscious feeling of repression, because it resonates with those distorted patterns. Everyone should remember that Christians hate the Star of David the most. Try to show the Star of David to Christian around of you. You're guaranteed to draw a barrage of criticism, saying you're bringing what they consider to be an evil spirit symbol into the church to curse the church. This is why, during World War II, Germans saw Jews with hearts of David embroidered on their clothing and felt nothing for it. Instead, they felt the symbol intimidated the devilish Jews. Another crucial point to understand is that Jesus never advocated the so-called glory of the cross. You'll understand this by reading the Guan posthumous records. This is Korean revelation for Eastern world, and it recorded first 60 years of Enoch's life in Doomsday generation. It also told us the beast in Revelation chapter 13 in the Doomsday. The Guan posthumous records mentions the 10 victories, but it doesn't mention as the cross, rather as the Chinese word meaning rice, and it is the combination of 2 crosses. What's the difference between the cross and the rice? The rice-shaped cross emphasizes 2 crosses, one facing east, for Enoch, and one facing west, for Elijah. This is why the Chinese character for Chen is created with the radical ear plus the character for the word meaning east. The radical ear represents a person seen from the side, nailed to a tree. In Chinese, the radical ear can only face east, meaning sitting west facing east, from left to right, that is for Enoch. When Jesus was crucified, 3 people were hung on the cross. The correct arrangement should be one from left to right, and one from right to left. However, Jesus was in the middle. Only when 3 people and 3 crosses were arranged like this, they can converse each other. When Jesus was crucified, one person represented the house of Israel, whose wheat had already ripened. Jesus told him, "Today you and I are in paradise." The other person represented the house of Adam, who were not yet fully trained and would need another 2,000 years to be ready. However, the Chinese word rice, shaped like Union Jack, also represents the United States, since it sounds alike. Furthermore, the most important ability for achieving the 10 victories is represented by the 4 points, which represent the 4 breasts. These 4 breasts are like the Holy Spirit nourishing each of us. Of all national flags, the United Kingdom is shaped like the Chinese word rice, also known as the Union Jack, because it represents the three connected parts of England, Scotland, and Ireland. If you look at the shape of the British Isles, it forms an equilateral triangle, a perfect balance of power. An equilateral triangle perfectly balances the three powers and is very stable. However, when you distort the triangle to the point of exaggerating the power of one side, it becomes a distorted triangle. When all aspects of society are well taken care of and impartial, it forms the perfect the word rice shape, which is what the devil hates most. If you remove the horizontal bar in the middle, it becomes two inverted triangles. And that horizontal bar, it's like a door latch, fastening two triangles together. So the word rice shape is what God truly values. We won't dwell on it any further, but simply remind everyone, don't let building a few churches or crosses prevent you from designing a den of evil. That's a den of evil that imprisons people, and who knows how many have died. This is why, as Joseph, Ju Menglong ultimately chose to suffer a greater tragedy than they did, to redress their injustice and convict their murderers. Remember, many of the artists who died before Ju Menglong were likely the little angels who paved the way for him. Because of the angels, they will eventually be released from the hell and enter the ark. Those who descend from heaven have chosen their own destiny before descending, though they are unaware of it initially, only realizing it in the final years. This is why Ju Menglong chose not to flee, but instead used his pure purity to make those who were filthy even filthier. Thank God, he ultimately told Enoch and now to everyone else, that Ju Menglong, also known as Joseph's soul, although temporarily imprisoned in darkness, is safe and at peace. It is simply that the angels are fighting for him. Is this why the psychic world is so chaotic right now? We're actually fighting for him, too. However, as many social media outlets have said, we're fighting for ourselves, because only when we win can we truly redress Ju Menglong's injustice and redress the injustices of all the wronged souls. Everyone, rise up. Just a reminder, demons are connected worldwide. While they may fight each other to the death, when it comes to Ju Menglong, the lines are drawn clearly. So, despite numerous obstacles, we will prevail. Justice will triumph over evil, and it will happen in the coming years, months, and days.